Everybody, welcome back to the Collegiate Call of Duty League. I'm Hold Shift. With me is Vision, Proper, and Infinity, as we'll be jumping into our preview show, breaking down everything that's happened so far in playoffs and what's still to come. Before we get too far, though, I want to just kind of get your guys' initial thoughts. We've had a chance to kind of watch over the last handful of days and weeks for these playoffs. Visions, this playoffs has been absolutely wild for a number of reasons. But you were one of the only guys out there that had a lot of stock in Carleton making it as far as they have so far. What were your kind of thoughts and reactions to what you saw, not just yesterday, but the weekend before as well?
I think that we're seeing a team fully come together. I think I talked about a lot when I made the prediction that Carleton was going to make the run that they did. It was based off the back end of Hawk and 47 guiding 3 players. And I think when you have that kind of a bond with 5 players, it really comes together as a team once you go through 18 games through the regular season and come in towards the playoffs. So my takeaway so far is that they look on fire, and it's not just the Hawk and 47 show anymore. We saw Purple Penguin start to step it up. We saw Thief go big when he needs to with that AR and start to play a little bit more of that actual AR role. So my takeaway is that Carleton still looks good. My prediction is still on track for them to at least finish in towards the top 3 and go all the way to that losers final. But I think that it's going to be, again, looking at those 3 players that I highlighted to back up 47 and Hawk, because they obviously can't do it all, but they just need to replicate what they did yesterday as they were doing it so well.
Proper, you had Georgia Southern out of all of us that did our predictions from the caster side actually finishing second. They're still in the mix, but they got knocked out at a 3-0 by Humber. What are some of your considerations as far as what you saw from GSU, maybe on the strength or potentially the weaknesses side for these guys?
I'm concerned, actually, more than anything. I'm actually hellaciously concerned. That match versus Humber that we covered yesterday did not exactly look good for Georgia Southern. Everything that we had thought about was like, oh, now they're going to be able to come around with their S&D, where they've been talking about how they've been strengthening out and they've been looking pretty strong. Wasn't exactly the case, but for Georgia Southern as a whole, I mean, if you can bring yourself back to where we were even at the kickoff tournament, way back at the beginning of Modern Warfare and the CCL season, yeah, maybe we might see some things coming around. But I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think at this point in time, I'm along with the Carleton hype train that Visions has been sipping on with his maple syrup in the morning. I think at this point in time that Carleton is probably gonna end up getting the clap back against Georgia Southern. Let's not forget that Georgia Southern did knock down Carleton to the losers bracket prior. But I think that all the wind is out of the sails for Georgia Southern. I'm nothing short of concerned for the GSU Eagles COD.
Interesting take. And Infinity, you've been kind of our guy that's been mostly in the wings, trying to get as much casting in as possible. I know you've been watching a lot, but what was some of the biggest things that you kind of mentioned or saw throughout the last couple of weekends of this playoffs that really kind of stand out in your mind?
I don't know. I think everything's kind of gone as expected for the most part. So there's kind of been like a few upsets, here, there, and everywhere. Like Carleton is still, technically speaking, coming in with a 13th seed, even though, as we've kind of noticed in the past, they haven't had the easiest division in regular season, right? I mean, They're in one of the more stacked divisions, so they were kind of going to come out with a lesser seed. But there's only been a few upsets beyond that. You take a look at what would be our top 4, and pretty much the top 4 seeds are still here. Right. So at this point in time, I'm looking at this now. I'm thinking, well, this is now just a fight for, I guess, between those top 4 teams. And honestly, I think it's pretty close. To be honest with you, I think you guys have got, Tammy Marine ahead, as your predictions were said. But I'm not too sure. They've taken a few knocks here and there.
Well, going through some of the matches that we had yesterday, I think that your story point of not a lot of surprises was pretty much just kind of the mantra of it. We had 12 teams that came through. We had a really tight game 5 versus Purdue and Carleton, where I think that whoever wins that game makes this same run that Carleton's currently on. Like if Purdue could just win a search and destroy, that's all they needed to do, which is win a search and destroy. They very well could be where Carleton currently is versus Georgia Southern. Not the case, but I want to get initial reactions on you guys with this Full Sail squad that came into the top 12, having been knocked down very early by Penn State White in winners round 2. But they get a 3-0 versus Lebanon Valley. They get 3-0 by the Illini Orange squad. And Visions, I want to start with you. We talked a lot when we were watching the game kind of occur with Illinois playing up against Carleton that this Illinois squad, yeah, they did well in the Midwest, but there were moments of sloppiness. What was kind of your takeaway from the fact that Illinois was able to beat Full Sail so early on?
Well, I honestly, my takeaway overall is pretty crazy because I had FSU actually going pretty far through my bracket, but seeing Full Sail drop down in the way that they did in that winners bracket, I think we kind of touched on a little bit on how that might have kind of affected maybe their mental, and then the scrims going in towards the day, they might have just been completely on tilt heading in towards that matchup against Illini Orange. But I think that there's a lot of people that maybe haven't been giving Illini Orange a lot of credit, and despite them getting 3-0'd by Carleton and yesterday as well, you do look back towards those games, and those games weren't necessarily that close. I think that was another thing that we also kind of hit on stream, right? Like 6-3 in Search and Destroy, 164-137. The map number one was maybe close because it was just a hard point difference. But my takeaway is that FSU definitely just kind of fell apart when it mattered most. They went toe-to-toe with the Eagles in that game 5 that we casted over Shift, where we saw a lot of great things from them, and they had a chance and an opportunity to take that series away and potentially even come out of that division as the first seed. And that also would have likely knocked down GSU a couple pegs coming into the seed for this CCL playoff. So a lot of things could have been altered heading in towards the regular season, but they completely, I think, just went mental boom from what I can tell and from what I can see, and based off of the reactions from the players after and going and expressing on Twitter. So my takeaway is that Illini Orange, definitely no joke, but I think they just were able to catch FSU at the right place at the right time for as far as not being on that same page like they were during the regular season.
On top of that, the first matchup that they had, the first real test that they had was versus a very good Penn State white team, which they came out yesterday and looked like they were going to possibly just upset everybody that was in their path. They went game 5 versus Humber, but you were talking about it specifically. This is mostly a freshman roster, and that takes a lot of metal to come together so quickly to beat 5 players that you've never played with before and to put on the kind of performance that they did. Of course, they did eventually fall to Concord Maroon, but they put together a hell of a run.
No, this Penn State White squad. I remember actually casting the first match versus Full Sail with Visions. That match was awesome, and I'm always gonna remember that match just because Penn State White, again, I had no idea what they were gonna look like. They never played on stream before. Had no idea what any of these players look like individually, but then they opened up my eyes wider than you see them right now, thanks to this coffee I have in front of me. But still, when you're thinking about it as a whole, Penn State White, I mean, yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head on the point that I brought up yesterday. This mostly freshman roster, maybe we were looking at just gas running out of the tank towards the tail end of that match versus Concord Maroon. Maybe it's actually just playoff Concord Maroon coming white hot and ready, because it was the domination that was just so hellaciously close until the final moments that Penn State White were still leading into the second half, that they were still able to hold on. And I believe it was like a 154-150 ending for that domination. But it was contested all the way until you got to the Search and Destroy, which, I'm not going to lie, I would expect Concord Maroon to be able to take, because that's slowly became a little bit more of a stronger game mode for them. And then that last hard point, which was 250-146. So, I mean, that within its own self, I'm more or less chalking up that Penn State White probably ran out of gas at that point too. We started seeing that it was Shades that was leading the kill feed. No shade to Shades, because Shades as a standing AR has been kind of a highlight for this entire team for quite some time, even at the beginning of playoffs, putting in off an impressive numbers. I mean, through the regular season, they ended with like a 1.67 KD or something of such a high stature. But we didn't see Report popping off. We didn't see Senso popping off. And if it's just your main AR that's fighting all of the value, especially against a team like Concord Maroon, who has pretty standing subs, Trauma. You also got Megatron flexing in and out of there, Paralysis, not to mention Andrew Crook went absolutely massive in a multitude of instances of that match included. It's going to be tough. And I think that Penn State White, you got to be proud about the run that you had. They did a damn fine job coming out of the gates and putting a lot of teams on notice that this team is definitely something you got to watch out for many seasons to come.
Now, we've got a representation here in the top 5 for every single region, every single division that was in the mix here, Brody. But the biggest thing that kind of tilted my eye early was the simple fact that outside of UT Dallas and Texas A&M Maroon, everybody else from the West got knocked out at least at top 24, if not top 32. We talked a lot through the regular season about being the fact that the West was one of the easier divisions, maybe not as skilled. Maybe, there may be some consideration that they're playing from a much wider range as distance to kind of connect to one another. You mean Oregon to Texas is not exactly a next door neighbor when it comes to states, but UT Dallas, I think a lot of us had it in a little bit of a higher favor, but I kind of want to get your reactions over the West as a whole, as far as how that whole division kind of shook out in their playoff run. Oh, Mike might be muted there, Mr.
My
Brody.
apologies. It's because my
You're
mic
good.
is all over the place right now. Anyway, yes, this is a thing, right? Because we talked about this a little bit. Unfortunately, I mean, the way kind of it is with connection, America is a massive country, right? So unfortunately, you can't have
True.
teams just play each other from across, I guess, the country, I suppose, if that's what you want to say. But I don't know. But yeah, so I suppose the thing is here is that unfortunately, just because of the way that those countries are grouped, you are going to get these situations where there are some divisions that are higher skilled than others, and unfortunately, that specific division is just one of those where maybe the skill grouping there isn't as good as maybe some of the other divisions. And when we talk about the Northeast division, for example, that is so stacked in my opinion. It proves when you've got, as I said before, Carlton, who are the 13th seed coming in, and they're still here as the last 5 teams on Sunday or Saturday, I suppose. It feels like a Sunday because obviously this is the championship day. But yeah, so it does happen at the end of the day. Again, it is kind of unfortunate, but hey, they can improve. There are still more seasons of collegiate Call of Duty to come on. Maybe it's just they're not the best at Modern Warfare. Who knows?
Very well could be the case. We'll be taking a look at our bracket a little bit more fully here, but for now, we'll send things over to a small break and hear from Tunes, from Humber, as far as what his outlook for this whole squad was going into the second week of playoffs. We'll be right back. Guys, I'm here with Tunes from Humber College, a school that honestly, before last year, couldn't even tell you where it was. No idea. A little sleepy town out in Ontario, Canada. But you guys kind of came through the scene last year in season 1 with electric fashion. The team before this current roster, or most of this current roster, played on it was just like 6-6. And now you go a year and a half later, you guys are on a 37-game win streak. Tunes, tell me about Humber College, where it is, what you guys do out there, maybe what your major is specifically, and kind of how this team came to be.
Sure. So Humber College is located in or just outside of Toronto. It's like Rexdale, like a small little city. We pretty much came together. It was like complete coincidence. Like I seen Stevie walking to class one day, and like someone had told me like briefly that there's a Humber College COD team. And I told him about it, and so we both looked into it more. Ended up on the team eventually, and then someone told me Cush Point goes to Humber too. So I messaged him. He got on the team, and ever since then, we've been, like you said, 37-game winning streak. A little bit more about myself. I was a business major. I was getting a Bachelor of Commerce in Management Studies. I actually just graduated though, so now I'm technically not even in Humber. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's a little background of Humber.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get into it a little bit more because, obviously being the defending champions from season 1, there was kind of a lot kind of riding behind this team going into season 2, but it didn't come without a little bit of controversy as you guys were playing with a different 5th and people were saying, Humber's not practicing. They're going to get upset by teams like Rutgers and Penn State White. Kind of take me through the journey of that regular season.
So the beginning of the regular season, there was a lot of controversy, I guess, like a lot of skepticism, or that's not the right word, but something like that. Yeah, a lot of people are just doubting us because Nakama, our 5th player from last year, graduated, which was kind of like weird just because like we kind of like in a sense showed him how to play the game and molded him into a great player he is. And then we picked up a new 5th that we knew from the local scene in Toronto who is a great player. So we started off the season, we played Rutgers and Penn State, I think, within the first couple of weeks. We beat Rutgers pretty easily, and then we played Penn State in some pretty close games. But after that, it was kind of just like an easy road up until playoffs because those were the best teams in our divisions, and we played them really early on. So we filled in with like our subs, like whoever wanted to play could pretty much play. Because we were hoping we were going to be playing with our 5th D'Angelo that played the first couple of weeks. And then towards the end of the season, he said he couldn't play anymore. And so now we're here playing with our sub, Dylan, or Crozier.
Yeah, Crozier's been a guy that I think most people in the CCL are familiar with. But you guys had mentioned, I think when I talked to you before we actually did our prediction stream, you were saying that the practice has been getting a little bit better for you guys. You've been playing a little bit more often. But even still, your first 2 games through playoffs, you drop both Search and Destroy. So as you're starting to go through the rest of your playoff run, what are some of the things that you guys learned from the first weekend going into the second weekend that you're trying to adjust on?
So I think the big takeaway from the first weekend was that we have to like actually like take every single game serious. Like I know it sounds really bad, but like put in 100% effort every single map, every single series, every single life for that matter. Because we went back and watched like our stream, and we were throwing away a lot of easy or like stupid lives that we shouldn't have been doing or should have been throwing away. And then to combat like our bad S&D performance last weekend, we've been going over S&D every single day. going through like setups, routes to take. Been practicing it a little bit. So yeah, we've been really going over that. And today I think we're going to be going over getting some more S&D reps in and playing some more domination because we were struggling a bit in that. But yeah, we've been practicing almost every single day for the last couple of weeks, I want to say, or just talking about how we want to play the game every single day. So it's been good. We've been practicing quite a bit. I'm pretty happy about it.
So for you guys to go back to back, in your mind, who's the biggest obstacle in your way to get through that challenge?
Right now, like we scrimmed GSU the other day and they took quite a few maps off of us. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
They're really good. We had a couple players not playing like how we usually play, but I think our biggest competition right now is just the game in front of us. Is PSU White. Like they're a really solid team, and a lot of people have been gassing them up. I've been gassing them up like all season. Like I know they're a really good team. Um, Realistically, like I'm just kind of like looking at it like game by game. Just PSU White right now. That's all I'm caring about. GSU after that, HAMU or Concord, whoever wins that. And yeah, just one game at a time. That's all I'm worried about right now.
It's a good mindset to have. Tunes, thanks so much for joining me. And of course, best of luck through the weekend, my man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Heard it from the man himself as Humber again waiting in the losers finals to potentially get back to the grand finals. But we want to take some time to look back at the bracket as a whole, as some of the games from round 1 and round 2 feel like they happened a long time ago, because simply put, they really did happen a long time ago. Let's start in winners round 1, boys. Again, it was interesting when we did our prediction show. I know Infinity, you weren't able to make it for us with that one, but we pretty much had the exact same picks all the way through, and just about everything played out the way we thought they would, with only a couple of exceptions. The one that pops up in my eye first is that Illini Orange versus Oregon game, mostly because look how far Illini Orange have made it. Imagine if they were in a world where they dropped that game 5 versus Oregon and fall to the losers bracket first. That was a tight series, and the Oregon Ducks, who again came out of the West right in the middle of the pack, I don't think our expectations were all that high for that team here, Visions, but they showed up and put together a pretty special first game.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think they almost reverse swept that series. And that, I mean, like seeing teams within the CCL, like being able to bring things back after going 0-2 down, that gives me a lot of confidence in the competition that we have, because it means that the mindsets and the mentals of some of the players that we have within the college league here is super strong. But that was definitely a little bit of an interesting one, because you do think of that potential match swinging the way of Oregon, and they go in towards that next round where they play UT Dallas. So maybe UT Dallas then advance towards the next round and go up against Concord Maroon like we had all predicted, and then beat Concord Maroon. But Illini Orange, they close things out, which sometimes they have trouble closing out those game 5 search and destroys. So that it was a very interesting series that kind of set the pace and set the tempo of the bracket for them coming through. But I think it shows that they went a really long way. Like you had already said, they were able to go right through the bracket after that. And I think when you play those very intense game 5s in the very first round, it's like, all right, we got our game 5 out, guys. We clutched up in the winners round, despite it being against Oregon or despite it being against, a top team, whatever it might be. It's still a feel-good moment as a whole, and I think that's what really kind of fueled the rest of the fire for as far as how far they actually made it in this run.
And proper, taking a look a little bit further down the road here, Bowling Green State and Grand Canyon, that was a match that we were looking at saying, oh, this could really go either way. I know a lot of us were throwing a lot of favor to Bowling Green State, but they couldn't quite get past the Antelopes of Grand Canyon in this one, a very tight 4-game series.
Yeah, no, I mean, Grand Canyon, every single time that I've ever seen them on broadcast through the regular season, and same thing with BGSU. They have the same exact talking points. It's like they got really good strong points. They also have a lot of weak points too. So that's why I was looking at this match included, and I was hard for the swing either way. Though for Grand Canyon as a whole, it's really nice to see that they were able to pull through with a certain amount of gusto in the playoff bracket versus Bowling Green State. You also got to look into account that it comes down to practice as we were heading in towards this playoff bracket. Maybe it could come down to Grand Canyon being able to showcase a little bit more practice before they ended up going up against BGSU. BGSU, we've also known throughout the regular season that they have definitely struggled on and off stream against higher caliber teams. Grand Canyon coming at the 19th seed. It might have been a little bit of a misnumber, perhaps. It's tough to get these seedings out through all the divisions too, but Grand Canyon, to me personally, it was no surprise that they were able to take against Bowling Green State.
And just below that, Brody, Purdue and UT Arlington, I think there were some people out there in their bracket predictions that said this UT Arlington team, maybe they could do it. A lot of people sleeping on this team from the West. And they had a really tight series with the Boilermakers from Purdue, 250-221. They took the search 6-2, but then from there, Purdue just showcased why they are a top 10 team in the CCL as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is kind of one of those matches where you take a look at the seeding and you think the 6th seed is going to have this one. And to be fair, as you say, to UT Arlington, they absolutely came out. They brought it within 30 points on the hard point. And then, as you say, they actually ended up winning the search and destroy in a rather indomitable fashion. So that's not a bad performance from them whatsoever. But again, if you're UT Arlington, you're not too disappointed with losing that series 3-1. Yes, you run out of steam, but at the end of the day, you come in as the 25th seed. And that gives you, I guess, the strength to go on in the bracket and maybe make a run. Unfortunately, that's not how it turned out for UT Arlington. But still, I guess it's a nice start. That's the kind of start you want again. Even if you don't win that series, you still come out swinging, you still take a map, and you still bring it pretty close in the first one. But again, you're going up against the 6th seed in Purdue, who have already been noticed as a pretty good roster here in the CCL. That's not a match you really expect to win.
We're going to skip right past the Lebanon Valley and Alabama game. We'll talk about that later, but I want to go all the way down to the bottom. Louisiana Lafayette and Rutgers Scarlet in what I think was the truest and most insane upset that we saw in the bracket. All the way near the bottom there, Louisiana Lafayette taking it in 4. A very tight contest at all of the respawns, but Rutgers only able to take a 6-0 in the search and destroy, which we mentioned this, Visions, throughout the entirety of the playoffs. Louisiana Lafayette has been weakest in their search. But this still was a major surprise in a lot of people's minds that Rutgers Scarlet was knocked down to the losers bracket in round 1.
Yeah, it certainly was and I think I also hit some points when we had started bringing up this matchup within the prediction show when we were talking about winners. And I think I had Rutgers Scarlet going at least a couple rounds in towards the winners at the very least, where this squad had gotten a lot of great compliments for as far as their scrims, how they've been matching up against some of the top teams within their division, up against Humber, Penn State White, things like this. There was just a lot of credit that was given over towards this Rutgers Scarlet squad. So when you see them come in and just get, blown out and double first rounded, where do you think things go wrong? I unfortunately don't have an exact point on what would have went wrong, but you just have to assume they lost that first match. They weren't able to regain, and they just simply fell flat in those respawns, and they were unable to get anything going. But that's you got to give some credit towards Louisiana for taking them out, because this is a team that you can see it. They're top 8 coming in towards it. They're a top 10 team. They get double first rounded right in towards the bracket, where you just cannot believe that something like that would happen to a squad that was talked up, that was also performing well, that had excellent stats through the entire season. So that was honestly got to be probably one of the biggest upsets, I think, for sure, because there was a lot of people I think that had rated this Rutgers Scarlet squad to definitely take out some of these other top seeded teams within the playoffs.
Well, definitely the lower seeds, to be sure. I mean, to be clear, they didn't get double first rounded, but dropping to the losers bracket in round 1 was definitely a major surprise. I know there were bracket predictions out there where people had them finishing top 4 in some of those, and obviously not coming through completely. But as we swap down and go to the losers bracket for losers round 1, this was another, setup that I think most of us predicted this correctly. We take a look at some of our early predictions through this. The only one that we really kind of had a mix up on was UT Arlington, Oregon. Those are the two that maybe we weren't 100% sure where they were going to finish. And you take a look at Oregon, they were able to find that 3-0 versus Butler. And that series was relatively close, though. 250-190, 6-5, 159-142 the scores. At Infinity, this was a Butler Bulldogs squad that we had seen in season 1. And we thought that they would be very good throughout season 2, but they just fell a touch short from where we thought our expectations were actually going to be able to line up for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I mean, let's not go too far with it, I suppose. I mean, at the end of the day, they pull it to round 11 in the search and destroy. So it wasn't a terrible performance, but still, again, this is one of those I guess situations in which you kind of expect them to do a little bit more in CCL playoffs. But again, this is what we love about CCL playoffs. You have these matches where they're pretty close, but at the end of the day, one team comes out on top, and it might be an upset. And in this case, it was maybe not according to the seeding, but still. So it was a little bit disappointing to see Butlers go out in round number 1, or double rounded, as we like to say here on the caster's desk. But again, I mean, they still put up a fight. 60 points in the hard point, as I said, round 11, and only a 20-point differential on the domination. Yeah. Even though it was a 3-0, the scoreline doesn't exactly suggest how close of a series it actually was.
Now I want to talk about Alabama here proper. This is a squad that got 3-0'd by Lebanon Valley. 250, 163, 6-2 and 164, 136. But the matchup versus Arkansas, people were out there saying that, hey, maybe Bama isn't going to put as much effort into the opening rounds. They want a little bit of an easier losers bracket. They did not get an easier losers bracket. Yeah, they're still alive through a lot of this, but this first matchup versus Arkansas, a rematch from the West or from the Southeast Division, and they nearly dropped this one. They do take it 3-1, but all of the respawns were close, and Bama couldn't find a way to win the search.
Yeah, no, Alabama, I mean, they had something a little bit special going their way, too. I mean, when you're dealing with Alabama, I got to commentate a lot of their regular season games. I got to commentate some of their playoff games, too. And being able to see their growth and being able to see how they've been able to come together, too. This is 100% of a respawn team. Probably not to the same deficit that Purdue is. At least you're able to take a few search and destroy wins throughout the regular season. But at the same point in time for Alabama, when you're looking at Rosu, Jay Radiate, and Honcho, those are three players that really come to life, and especially when the fire is underneath them. Every single time that I see them, even in that loss versus Penn State White, they were still able to piece together a lot of beautiful outcomings for their team, especially in the respawn. And you can even see against Penn State White, too, although it was a deficit of a loss, 250-94, they got smoked on that hard point. That domination was something absolutely beautiful for me because I was able to see the teamwork in between those three individuals that I just spoke about, Rosu, Jay Radiate, and Honcho, that you got to see how well Alabama truly play as a team. And when they're on track like that, they can be a really scary roster to be going up against.
Yeah, this is a hell of a run for Bama. I don't know if we have a chance to pull up and take a look at their statistics as a whole, but this is, again, a Southeastern division, which we came into saying how difficult this division was going to be and how incredible it was for Georgia Southern to go undefeated. But for Bama, again, these were out of the top 32 teams from the playoffs. You see what they were able to do in domination specifically. That was their game mode where they found a couple different reverse sweeps through the regular season, mostly in the back end, that this was one of the only squads that were down in the Southeast that really had a handle on domination from the get-go. And Visions, we know how crazy that game mode could be in its current state, but also the fact that it's changed a bunch since we first started the CCL regular season. And that, for me, was what really kind of stood out for me looking at this Bama squad as far as what would get them through some of these playoff teams, and it seemed to be the case here.
Yeah, it seemed to be the case here, and you already mentioned it, and you already hit the nail on the head for as far as the run that they made. And we got the cast over them yesterday, and yeah, they fell short against Penn State White, where that rookie team just looks to be on another level when it comes to their submachine gun play. But this Alabama esports squad, I also casted quite a bit with Proper, and I was kind of on the hype train for as far as, what this squad was going to be able to do, but I did not think they were going to make it as far as it did. But that was definitely off the back end of, being able to go toe-to-toe in a lot of these different game modes that we maybe didn't think they were going to be as strong in coming in towards playoffs, but we're able to make those changes. We're able to make that adaptation. And if I'm not mistaken, also was putting in a good amount of practice coming in towards playoffs as well, which is probably what led towards the run that they were able to do. But I think the biggest takeaway for me for Alabama esports is that they were able to upset a lot of teams, and it was in pretty dominating fashion. A lot of those games that they ran through in the losers bracket weren't actually that close, and coming away with a win like they did against all the teams that likely nobody was able to predict in their favor is obviously a big takeaway for this 14 seed to come in and do what they did.
Yeah, top 8 finish for the boys. But now we go back over, if we can, to the top side of the winners bracket. And we talked about it during our prediction show initially that whatever happens in winners round 2 could absolutely change the tide of these teams' brackets as a whole. I want to start up top, though. Infinity, Concord Maroon has been dominant all the way through this season, but they come out, they lose a round 11 search versus Arizona State, and they drop map 4, going map 5 versus an ASU Sun Devils team, which nobody, I don't think, ever would have predicted they would have even come close to scratching the surface of taking a map from Concord Maroon before these playoffs started.
Hey, look, right? I've been a Concord Maroon fan since my very first match. I'm sure we'll get the chance to discuss that in just a moment when we talk about, I guess, what will happen for today's matches at least. But in terms of this match in particular, yeah, absolute shock. I mean, I fully expected, I think, a number of teams. For me personally, I thought the top 4 seeds wouldn't have any issues at all in terms of even maps, right? Going up into maybe winners quarters, if not the winners semis. Congo Maroon dropping 2 maps here to me, I think it definitely shows that, I guess to use the term gods can bleed would be, the right term to go with. I think Arizona State should absolutely be proud of themselves here that they actually managed to take the wins that they did. I think you kind of have to put an asterisk over it in a way to say that these were very close wins, right? I mean, a couple of mistakes here and there and the hard points slipped up for Concord Maroon in map number 4. It went to round 11 in the search and destroy. It could just as easily been a 3-0. I mean, that really, I mean, literally one more search and destroy round to Concord Maroon and it would have been a 3-0. It would have been done in the domination. But still, it does prove that I think this is, again, the beauty of the CCL. The number of teams here, maybe lower seeded teams that maybe didn't do that well in regular season, can still do damage against the higher tier teams.
And proper just below that, UT Dallas, Illini Orange. A lot of us had UT Dallas getting through this matchup and then potentially getting through Concord Maroon. Granted, we did all say that it would have to find a way to win versus both of those teams. It wasn't going to be given to them at any stretch. But I don't think any of us would have expected the Illini squad to come out in 3-0. Granted, that was a close series, 250-199, around 11 search, and then just about 20 points in the dom. But this, I think, raised an eyebrow of a lot of different people because, A, I think we expected UT Dallas to go further, but B, beyond that, for the Illini squad, I don't think our expectations, even though they were a 10 seed, were all that high coming into these playoffs. I think you might be muted there, Mr. Proper.
UT Dallas. Sorry, I had my head in the palm of my hand because I'm just shaking my head. UT Dallas. What the heck happened, man? What can we honestly say? I mean, when you're looking at Illini Orange going 5 maps versus Oregon, something must have awakened. Like for all my Dragon Ball Z fans out there, like this must have been like the Frieza first form, and then once you got to the final form of Illini Orange, then you got playoff crit going absolutely Super Saiyan for the first time. That's what you're mostly looking at when it's that match versus UT Dallas. They got absolutely ran over. That 250-199, yeah, it says that it's a little bit closer, but for Illini Orange, something really came to life for them, especially coming off of that 5-map series versus Oregon. But for UT Dallas, I mean, I can't say that I'm upset. At the same point in time, UT Dallas, again, if you remember at the beginning of the entire season, Alan, we were talking about this with Jay, Mr. Jay Pistachio, that they were struggling just to find 5 people to play for UT Dallas, but then they started coming to life. And then they were struggling to feel good about their play. And then they started looking really strong. And that's why I personally also had UT Dallas going up against Concord Maroon in that winners quarterfinals. But it was not the case. Illini Orange, just something came to life inside of them. And that's why you saw Crit playing underneath the mantle of playoff Crit. Because it seems that all of the practice, all of the VOD review, that Crit, Scuffy, Grinch, Versa, all of them were able to showcase, including Shields, an all-star caliber player that they were able to bring to UT Dallas. UT Dallas, on the other hand, I mean, knowing some of these guys too, that if you take a look at them as a whole, that if they lose that map 1 and they start getting mentally boomed, it's hard to come back from that. They're a bunch of loving guys, and they wear their heart in the sleeves, but that could also come back to bite you in the ass when you're playing Call of Duty.
And now we jump down a little bit further in this winners round 2 and take a look at the Penn State White Full Sail game, which we framed up a little bit. But if we could just have a chance to look at Penn State White more fully as far as what their regular season stats were. Again, this was the team that was, I think, for a lot of us, slept on until really the last couple of weeks of the regular season visions. And we did not really kind of pay much mind at the beginning of the year. We were talking about potential good squads out there. We said, Penn State White, Penn State Blue, they're probably about even with one another. But you take a look again at what they were able to do in the respawns, a plus 82 differential in hardpoint. Their 4 losses were only versus the teams that really were, again, Rutgers and Humber pretty much throughout the entirety of the season. And for a group of young kids like this to put together this type of a stat line, extremely impressive.
It's very impressive. And I think the biggest problem that everyone had around Penn State White is that no one had seen them. No one had seen them on stream until the very end of the season, where I think it was Proper and I that actually casted over it. And we're like, all right, I think we're Penn State White fans. I don't know about you, Andy, but that's what we were kind of on board with. And yeah, it's off the back end of such young talent. Like I got a moment to, to talk with the captain and talking with the squad, hearing about some of just some of the things that they were able to do, the practice, how serious they were taking it, just completely like kind of flicked the switch for me for as far as, all right, this team is here to play. And they absolutely showed that against so many different series throughout the CCL. And once we got in towards, the actual playoff run, yeah, I think they definitely upset a lot of different teams, and they made a run that people maybe not have predicted. But you look at some of the differentials, you look at some of the stats, like they don't lie. Like this team is definitely very, very good. And yes, they're now knocked out, but what is this team going to be able to do going forward? Because as I also, I think watching that interview that you did with them, Shift, if I'm not mistaken, had talked about, this guy and all of his teammates coming together as a group of friends now. And it's not just like they're playing just to play their CCL games. They're also now friends outside of the game. And I kind of brought up that bond relationship that, Carleton kind of now have with all of their group of players. Well, that's the exact same thing that this Penn State White have. And when you're that close in and out of game, it just is just going to show when you're playing in game and playing on stream. And that's exactly what they were able to do for us.
Hey, take a look back at the bracket again here quickly. Not just the 3-1 versus Full Sail, but to really showcase that Humber might not be as strong as a lot of people were considering. That 3-2 game 5 in the winners quarterfinals was a tight one where, unfortunately, that slim margin, both in the domination and in the search, they could not quite get the job done for either the 3-0 or the match win. Humber with the reverse sweep there, but regardless, still an impressive showcasing for Penn State White in the winners bracket. I'm sure we'll see them again to talk about a little bit more as we get to the losers bracket side of things, and that's where we'll take things down. Of course, Georgia Southern and Carleton. We'll talk about that first matchup again once we eventually get through. But before we drop too far, Louisiana Tech, Louisiana Lafayette, a battle for the Bayou State. And this was one where the first map, I remember it was a Ramaza hard point. We talked about it proper a bunch through the regular season. ULL does not have the ice. And they dropped that series 3-0, but still at the same rate. If we take a look at Louisiana Tech stats really quickly, I got to give them some love. I mean, this was a team that had to go with some last-minute substitutions because they were on a quarter system, I believe, and 2 of their players did not enroll for the following quarter. And then beyond that, just an unforeseen circumstance did not allow them to play yesterday. But this was a squad that did not just look impressive in a very tough division through the regular season, but they looked incredible in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, so I mean, you get Sir Galahad that comes in and is able to play a certain showcasing of, here and there, able to land a few shots. It's okay, but at the same point in time, you're also dealing with Hull Troll and Drops. Those are 2 players that will definitely be remembered for as long as time to come here for LA Tech. The Bulldogs were able to come back and bite hard against ULL. The Raging Cajuns just were unable to go up against the smoke that were able to be showcased there from Drops and Hull Troll. I think that Hull Troll alone almost dropped a damn near 40 in that hard point. And it was just something to be, it was a sight for sore eyes because, again, for ULL, the Raging Cajuns, I've been gassing up that team since the kickoff tournament. I'm sure you remember, Alan. Every single time that ULL keeps coming into the conversation, I'm just like, I just want this team to come back to life. I just want to be able to see ULL being able to showcase the same gusto that they showcased in that kickoff tournament because I know that Bandits got it. I know that J Money is also able to showcase their talents too. And then you also have Payton along the way that creates a definitive trio that LA Tech just shouldn't have been able to go up against. But when you have Hull Troll and you have Drops being able to do what they've been doing all season long, and then when you finally get to that domination, being able to finally showcase their strongest game mode of it all, to where I believe it was a 210-94 or something like that. It wasn't even close. LA Tech were definitely coming out to play, regardless of having those substitutions.
I would take a look more extensively at our losers bracket as winners round 3 we pretty much talked about everybody who was up there as that happened yesterday. But in this losers round, again, there were a number of games that went unspectated that really worth mentioning. Again, Louisiana Lafayette do get through Oklahoma State. That wasn't much of a problem. Same thing for Carleton and Oregon. Full Sail, again, just a surprise to see them in losers round 2. They had a very tight series again versus Bowling Green State. This was a squad that I think a lot of us had going potentially further into the bracket, but it was just unfortunate that they played as good of a team as Full Sail here in round number 2, Vision.
Yeah, they played as good as a team as Full Sail, but I mean, we also say that, and then we see them kind of fall short heading in towards some of their matches afterwards. But I think that Bowling Green State, I mean, not getting a whole lot of time, at least casting over them, you can see just for as far as the scoreboard, like most of those respawns were fairly close overall. And the fact that was able to go towards a game 4, I think is something that you can take away as Bowling Green State because it's a number 5 seed. Like Full Sail was supposed to make a deep run. They're, at least in my bracket, I have these guys definitely finishing, I believe, top 4, making it all the way through their bracket here. But the fact that they did end up putting up a pretty good fight and kind of just able to put Full Sail down in a sense where they were able to take one of those maps, there's something that you can take away from this. But it also just starts to show the weaknesses very early on for Full Sail, saying, okay, well, they dropped down to losers bracket in round number 2. They come out with a 3-1 win, but it's not necessarily clean. It's not necessarily dominant. So you can almost start raising questions here for this squad for as far as why maybe their run had actually fell a little bit short and didn't live up to the expectations that everyone had kind of set for them heading in towards the season 2 playoffs.
Beyond that, though, this is where all of the other Western teams outside of Dallas, Texas A&M Maroon fell. But I want to give some love to the UT Knoxville team here at the end of their run, as they only had one more game beyond this Infinity. But this was a UT Knoxville squad that, again, found themselves in a very tough division. They were looking strong in the early parts of the season versus teams in the early maps, but then eventually would lose in either reverse sweep fashion or something of the other nature would come through and kind of keep them from winning out a full series. They had an electric back end of the regular season. And yeah, they're able to get past Grand Canyon, but the rematch versus Bama, that's the one that I'm kind of looking at right here, is a 3-0. Again, relatively close all the way through. It's a little bit heartbreaking to see UT Knoxville get knocked out just top 16.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate, right? Because you go back to winners round one, and UT Knoxville, because of their low seeding, that's their 21st seeding, right? They face Penn State White straight away.
Right,
We've already discussed here in this pre-show as a roster that has really come out and shocked us, and they've been completely on form in this CCL playoffs. So you're starting as UT Knoxville right in that loses round one. You have to make a run. You're facing an Alabama roster that is in the midst of making that very same run. I mean, what Alabama won 4 loses rounds straight before finally falling to, guess who? Penn State White. Yeah. So it's kind of tough, right? Because it's kind of one of those what ifs. Like, what if Alabama is not the team that UT Knoxville faces? You know, what if they face even someone like Full Sail, who clearly haven't had the best playoffs here in the CCL 2020. So it really is just kind of unfortunate that they faced Alabama, an on-form Alabama too. But it's not to say they didn't put up a fight. Again, they came within like 45 points in the hard point. Session Stray wasn't the best, but again, the domination not that far off as well. 13-point difference between the two teams. Again, it is just unfortunate that they faced Alabama at this point in the bracket, because I do kind of feel that maybe UT Knoxville, they could have got a little bit further.
And this is where, again, right below that, Rutgers Scarlet falls out at just top 16. A major surprise, I would say. Again, a lot of people had them going in the depths of this bracket, but a number 7 versus number 8 matchup, UT Dallas. This would be their second Game 5 in a row after they were able to get past Mississippi State. But I mean, proper Rutgers Scarlet. I mean, we take a look at their stat lines. This was a squad that they talk a lot. They have personalities that, I'm not saying that in a negative way, but they're a very vocal squad. They're big, notable players that not only existed throughout this regular season, but also in the season previous. You see their ranks: 10th out of the 32 teams in Hardpoint, 12th in Search, 12th in Dom. For them to finish just top 12, or just top 16 rather, is a major surprise.
I think if you go back and you look at that upset that they got handed by ULL in the opening round of the winner side of the bracket, then this is not going to be the same outcome for Rutgers Scarlet. But Rutgers Scarlet, they had to play with what they had, right? You get knocked down in the losers bracket, you 3-0 Arizona State after you 3-0 Maryland, and then you come through and you face UT Dallas. UT Dallas, on the other hand, just got done, like you said, in a Map 5 series versus Mississippi State. Some of those maps are relatively close until you get to that final search in that opening hardpoint and the domination. But also, when you go to that Map 5 series versus UT Dallas and Rutgers Scarlet, I mean, that match within its own self, the search and destroy 6-3 the first time, 6-4 the second time. The first search and destroy going for Rutgers, the second one going for UT Dallas. It was close all the way through. And it was tough to be able to watch because, like you said, the personalities from Rutgers Scarlet, looking directly at you, Lou, you definitely have a lot of personality to bring to the table and a lot of good gun skill. But when you have Lou and Yodi plus Protocol playing their absolute hearts out, going up against a very hungry UT Dallas, which I know you know personally, Alan, that this team has been putting to the grindstone, both in the books and into the battlefield too. They were coming to play. They wanted to practice as much as humanly possible. And when you take a team like that for UT Dallas that has an outstanding standing AR in Mr. J Pistachio, and then you also have the walking highlight reel in Cocaine, it's going to be tough to go against, especially for a team that is feeling themselves. UT Dallas, again, going back to my previous point, is a very wearing their heart on the sleeve team that once they start feeling themselves and they start feeling the flow of the game, then they're really hard to stop.
Indeed the case. And this was the one big monkey wrench in a lot of people's brackets, which is where we take our conversation next. Again, $100 going out to team that finishes in first overall, or not the team, but the person that finishes with the best, most correct bracket. $100 from me. And if we get a chance to take at that leaderboard, Crozier is currently the guy who's on top. A total predicted score so far of 116 points. He's got 166 potential. As you look at some of the other members that are up there, not listed as Poner, who actually submitted his bracket late after the Wednesday start caught a little bit of a couple of people off guard. He's at 115 with 165 potential. But it really, for me, is going to come down to not just those two players, but you've also got where the final four finishes are for their teams, and respectively. Crozier, again, his bracket says biased prediction. He's got Humber winning the entire tournament, and that would have to come true for him to win everything. Otherwise, it goes down between Poner and Fnatic. And that's going to come down likely to, they've got the same champion. Both of them have Texas A&M Maroon to win it all. But Fnatic, he's got GSU finishing second. Poner's got Humber finishing second. And then beyond that, you also see Honcho, who could potentially get up there if he finds a way to see Concord get to the grand finals and beat Texas A&M Maroon. So those are your top breadwinners currently. I don't know what your guys' specific predictions were at. I have a total score of 94. With potential of 143 proper. Your take was blasted. You only got an 80 score. It's just the way that goes. The potential of 130. I don't know what yours was that. I'm looking at, actually, here it is. You have a possible of 133 visions, as you were currently sitting at 83. So our caster takes were not nearly as good as we needed them to be for me to kind of just take my own money. But regardless, this has been a fun competition thus far. And I think, again, just with Rutgers being knocked out so quickly, that definitely threw a lot of people aloof. So we'll see what happens between Crozier, Poner, Fnatic, and Honcho as things wrap up. We'll set things to a small break and hear from Texas A&M Maroon. When we come back, we'll be breaking down our final 5 teams before we jump into GSU versus Carleton after this.
Okay, how do you feel? How do you feel coming out of the regular season, being one of the strongest teams headed into playoffs? Anybody scaring you? You think you're going to be taking this with ease?
Nah, man, no one's scaring us. I mean, we've known we were going to be pretty good since before we even started playing the regular season. The experience we got, look at the guys we got. Like, I don't even have to do anything. I just sit in the hill, dude. Like, it's so easy. Like, like Landon's on an AR now. We scrimmed a little bit and played some P2P teams. We were playing them pretty close, some decent teams. So I don't know. Going to the playoffs seems like we should be see any issues coming in.
Yeah, that's perfect right there. That's the confidence you mostly expect coming out of one of the strongest teams, if not literally the strongest team. The seeding may be a little bit skewed with Concord Maroon just right above you, but I mean, with all of that being pushed aside, you think that there's going to be any team that's going to be standing in your way?
Really, I mean, Penn State White's been looking decently good, and GSU's good with T and Teston, but I mean, I just don't think they can compete with the lineup we have. We're just all around. We're just the best team on paper and in game. I mean, yeah, they might be pretty good, but I mean, we're just that one step above, and they're not going to be able to get. I think.
I love that confidence. Thank you so much, Decay. I really appreciate you stepping in and giving us some much needed thoughts ahead of the playoffs. And well, good luck with your playoff run, and I hope to see you in grand finals, man.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back, everybody. We're looking at now our final 5 teams. Losers quarterfinals is going to be up first. Georgia Southern and Carleton in a rematch from what they had in the winners round 2. Visions, I got to start with you first. It was an insane series, and you know I was going to go to you first with this one because Carleton are your boys. But that first game versus GSU, some of the tightest 4 maps we've seen so far in the playoffs. Do Carleton have enough to get past Georgia Southern in your mind? And if they do, where is it going to be?
It's going to be, I think, hitting the same point I hit before earlier on. It has to be off the back end of the 3 other players that aren't Hawk and 47. Purple Penguin, Thief, Cashier, all need to go big for me in my mind. And not necessarily just go big, but they need to hold their own and pull their weight. As long as they do that, they're going to be able to run through GSU, I think. And overall, I think it's also going to be off the back end of Carleton putting in the time and practice. They VOD reviewed it. I know they went back and actually watched that series. And if you didn't get to check it, well, the very first map actually swung the way of Carleton. I said that was actually going to be a major factor. I think that's going to be a major factor again going in towards the series up against Georgia Southern. You're going to have to take that first map, or at the very least, you're going to have to keep it super, super tight and super, super close, because I think Georgia Southern is a squad that is too good at search and destroy that if you lose that first map, they're going to go in towards that second one, and you're likely going to go up 2-0, and then you're obviously up against the wall. So you have to really start off strong in that first map. Likely you need to take it as Carleton, and if they do that, then I think they're going to be able to grab themselves the series win in either 3-1 or 3-2 fashion.
Yeah, you take a look at the stats here. These are the specific playoff stats that we've had so far near the bottom there. Again, they've been very good in the respawn. You mentioned the search and destroy coming into maybe being a point of contest. Just 2-2 as you were making up these graphics. Since that point, though, that was actually before the day yesterday, they have gotten better in search and destroy. They found a 6-1 and a 6-3 win versus Purdue and a 6-3 win versus the Illini squad. We can't really look too heavily into the Purdue wins because Purdue search and destroy is atrocious, but still being able to find a 6-3 versus Illini on their best map of Arklov Peak does give us some hope that Carleton maybe could make a run at Georgia Southern here.
Yeah, absolutely the case too, and I just hope that Georgia Southern just don't take their absolute blasting of a game versus Humber yesterday too close to heart. That they're able to wipe the slate clean. And they're able to come into this match versus Carleton. They're going to be able to showcase their strengths, like you said. In search is definitely where they're going to be able to showcase their strengths, but in respawn is where you're going to have to be able to step up. Even in the interview that we had with one of their members, you got to remember that this team had to put a lot of work into understanding how respawn heavily works. And going back to Austin's point and how Carleton looks on respawn, yeah, you got to be worried about 47 and Hawk, but don't forget about the rest of the players on the map. Because, I mean, when you're looking at the rest of the players and you're worrying about Team Thief and you're worrying about Penguin and Cash, those are all players at any given moment that can absolutely pop off. And you got to be able to meet that pressure and being able to bring it to them. Because if you lose that first hard point, I remember me and Austin speaking very heavily about this, that if Carleton wins that first hard point and it's not even close, that they could end up taking the entire series because of the confidence that comes along with that for this Carleton squad.
Taking a look at GSU and the other side of things, again, we had heard from the interview before that maybe we'll hear from it again later point, that their search and destroy has been some of the best. And one of the reasons why GSU got through that Southeastern division here, Infinity. But beyond that, their playoff statistics have been very good again in domination. And that's one that I feel like maybe I put too much investment in, but I honestly do believe that a team that's good at domination will have a natural edge in every single series that they come into. And that's been the case so far for GSU, as they've only lost one domination, and it was to the Humber squad, who still is undefeated in that mode.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what domination? Just swing game in the series, right? So you go 2-0 down, that's your starting points to bounce back, right? So if they are as good as domination as they have been thus far in, I guess, this entire playoffs, they could do pretty well going into this match, this rematch, I should say, against Carleton. That being said, this is a very, very close affair. As Visions I will get the chance to properly get in depth about it before the match begins after this preview show. It is going to be a very, very close affair between these two sides. I think, Proper really hit the nail on the head there in terms of that first map, the importance of, I guess, getting it in your favor, because Carleton actually ended up winning that first map. In the first go of things, and then they lost 3 maps straight. So it really is a case of, I think this is going to be an extremely close map. I can't wait. I just can't wait. But statistically speaking, both of these teams have had an incredible season thus far, and coming in as the 13th seed, I think Carleton should be very proud of themselves to get to this point.
Looking at the team awaiting the winner of this one, it's Concord Maroon. This is a team that, again, they've won every single tournament that they've played in so far in the CCL since they entered in right around the summer of last year. They won the throwback tournament to Black Ops 4. They win the initial at Modern Warfare. They win the initial warm-up tournament for the regular season, and they don't drop a single map if we can get Concord Maroon potentially instead of Texas A&M Maroon. This is a team that, again, we heard from them first. They're the #1 seed overall. They play a very close set versus Texas A&M Maroon all the way to Game 5. But Visions, this is a squad that I feel like still has something to prove. And they still not only have to get through whoever comes out of GSU versus Carleton, but they also still have to play against Humber for the first time.
Oh, Boston's muted.
I think Visions is actually muted again. Oh, is Visions even here anymore?
Hello.
There he is.
All right.
Oh, there he is.
My apologies. This team actually definitely surprised me in the sense that I didn't think that they were going to be able to consistently run through some of the teams that they did and actually get themselves to a point where they would go to Game 5 against Texas A&M Maroon. That was definitely a big surprise for me. So I'm definitely proven wrong as an individual for as far as saying that these guys are overhyped. I do think that this team is completely solid. You back up the stats. I mean, coming in towards all these 3 tournaments, and I think talking to Megatron as an individual really kind of opened things up for me, because I was like, okay, this guy's used to people always doubting them. And I think when this Concord Maroon squad is considered underrated or doubted, I think that's actually when they play their best. And we got to see them really go toe to toe with the number 2 seed that a lot of us have predicted to win the entire thing, which again, that's Texas and A&M Maroon. And coming in towards this matchup for whoever ends up playing them, it's not going to be easy. I think they're going to be prepared. They're going to be watching on stream. They're going to be ready. And for as far as what to expect from this squad, I mean, all consistently across the board, these players have all shown us multiple cases and multiple times that they can all go off when they need to. And that's obviously a very important attribute to a team that's going to make a run at getting yourselves in towards the grand final to the losers bracket.
Looking beyond that, though, at that Humber squad that's awaiting the winner of the losers semifinal, this team, again, we thought that they would be able to put up maybe a bigger fight than maybe we would have expected versus Texas A&M Maroon. They did take the first map in that series, but from there on out, Texas A&M just had their way with them. But this is a Humber squad that up until this point, again, was flawless in the respawn throughout the regular season. They started their first weekend of playoffs flawless there as well, with a little bit of maybe shaky consideration as far as their search and destroy goes here proper. But things have picked up since. They're now total 7-2 in hardpoint, 4-1 in domination, but still at a negative differential and just 2-4 in search.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, right? Search, I'm always going to sound like a broken record here. It's going to win you matches. It'll win you tournaments. It'll get you a championship. You got to be aware of this too for Humber. And if you don't clean up that search and destroy, then this is where teams such as Concord Maroon even will be able to take away a map 5 situation, where if you go up against any sort of team, I would even say against Carleton too, you might get a run for your money. You got to be very careful with how you approach your search and destroy. But for Concord Maroon or any other team going up against Humber, you're looking at a respawn heavy team. Let's say that search and destroy does not go their way, that they lose map number 2, but they're able to win map number 1. You have to somehow still take a hard point or a domination away from Humber. You're dealing with challengers level talent in here. You're dealing with Cushpoint. You're dealing with Crozier, Stevie, Figure, Tunes. Every single one of them that you can end up talking about as a walking highlight reel to a certain standard. And when you're going up against them in a respawn mode to where their subs can go absolutely off, yeah, you have to be concerned with that their search and destroy might be their deficit, but that's really only if they get to a map 5, which is really tough to say that you ever get there versus Humber.
Well, finishing things off, Texas A&M Maroon. Again, out of the 5 teams we have kind of the Cinderella in Carleton. We have the season 0 champion in Georgia Southern. We've got, again, the undefeated tournament winner in Concord, the season 1 champion in Humber. But then, in a lot of people's minds, the big favorites of Texas A&M Maroon with D'Lo and Landon in the mix. These 2 players, again, world championship players from Black Ops 4. Just going to kind of run down the line from each of you guys as we take a look at their stats through the regular season and the first weekend of playoffs. What are the biggest things that kind of stick out in your mind, starting with you, Visions, when it comes to this A&M team?
The resilience and seeing them go to a game 5 against Concord Maroon and close things out. That gave me the confidence as a whole that this team has that ice. And I mean, you just touched on it. They have 2 players that just played in Black Ops 4, world champs, or not, I shouldn't say world champs, but played at champs. And these guys having that kind of experience, having that just overall experience being on stage and being in a venue where you're playing at such a high level and playing against some of the best people within the world, that alone just gives me enough to say that this team is likely going to win season 2 out for the CCL. But the standout things is definitely going to be, their stat line obviously is definitely one, but the resilience in game 5s and their ability to go clutch, and that's off the back end of Landon and D'Lo. These guys have showed us multiple times on stream. They've showed us multiple times throughout other leagues that they have exactly what it takes to go toe to toe. They play challenges path. Like, they take this as serious as it can get. And when you play with 2 people that are that serious on a roster, everyone else is naturally going to flow into that state of mind and naturally follow that energy for as far as how serious things are. And I think that was something that we questioned coming into playoffs as well. They take things serious. Well, it looks like that is the case. They can close out against the best teams. They did take out the first seed, and I think that anyone who goes up against them is definitely going to get a run for their money.
Proper, your thoughts?
What was it that Sen said even during the All-Star match? There's a lot of things that teams don't have, and they don't have a D'Lo and a Landon. Well, Texas, a whole D'Lo and a whole Landon. Yeah, Texas A&M Maroon, they got that. They got that and some more too. You and I actually had the pleasure of meeting D'Lo at IES 2020 too, just this current year. And I got to tell you, this kid's got the ice in his veins. They, like Austin was saying, taking this pretty damn seriously. When you got the brothers of Justify and Decay going absolutely off too, being able to cover a whole bunch of corners, so that way you have D'Lo and Landon being able to showcase their talents. I mean, yeah, this team, they are bringing the heat. They got the fire. I think that this is a team, again, and the reason being why a lot of us would definitely agree that Texas A&M Maroon, besides maybe one of us on this broadcast, that Texas A&M Maroon would probably end up taking this as a whole, is because they have the ice in their veins. They are able to showcase so much talent all the way up to the challengers, playing in a multitude of tournaments. Like Austin was saying, like we've all been saying, this team, they are here to play. They are looking for a championship.
Infinity, your final thoughts on this A&M team?
Honestly, there's not much I could say here that hasn't already been said. I mean, look, on paper, these guys are just insane. You look at the stats that you guys are seeing on screen right now, not having lost a single Search and Destroy performance over the entirety of both regular season and playoffs, making it all the way to the grand finals, pretty much undefeated in that game mode. It just says a lot, I think, about the mindset and the mental fortitude of a roster like this. They have played so well. And although I might be the only person on this broadcast who gives any, I guess, any credit to the idea that another team could be the champions of the CCL 2020. I absolutely am. And I think there are definitely reasons for that. That being said, I think they're definitely proving themselves. And anybody who questions, I guess, the caliber of this roster needs to get themselves checked out, because this roster is just insane. They are so good. Everybody on the roster pulls their weight, even though you might, point out a couple of players who are, I don't need to point out again. There's nothing else to say, man. They're just so good. I'm so excited to see whether or not they come out on top, because there are still 4 other squads here that can play and challenge them.
Very much so the case. But that's going to wrap things here for our preview show. It's going to be GSU versus Carleton in our losers quarterfinals. When we come back, it'll be Infinity and Visions on the call. You'll catch myself and Proper for the losers semis after, and then a natural rotation throughout the rest of the night. This is it. Final 5 teams. You're not going to want to miss out on this one, fam. Season 2 of the CCL will come to an epic conclusion in the next couple of hours. We'll step away for a break, and we come back. GSU, Carleton, after this.